I think strategy now is about resiliency. It's about inimitability. What can you do that nobody else can do? And can you do it fast? That's really what strategy is about. So that's the number one thing I'm talking about in my strategy classes. And my second thing that I'm talking about in my strategy classes is you as an individual, as a knowledge worker, how do you maintain productivity, efficiency? How do you collaborate? So let's talk about collaboration very, very quickly. But here's the truth. We have this new concept now that didn't exist even a few months ago called engineer prompting, right? How do you program to tell ChatGPT something better than what the competition told them to tell you what to do?
Welcome to the Signature Leadership Show. I'm Jamie Mason Cohen, and I'm thrilled to invite our guest today, my friend, Dr. Nick Bontis. Nick is a keynote speaker with 500 plus presentations around the world. He's a tenured professor at McMaster University with 300 publications to his name, 12 teaching awards, 5 books. He's a business owner with 3 billion assets under management. He's a world-class expert with 44,000 citations. That's up to the level of Nobel Prize winners. Harvard Business Review called him one of the world's real experts. And he's a media personality. McLean's University did a study and they found that he is one of the highest rated business professors at his school for 6 straight years. And he's a soccer dad. He's a vice president of CONCACAF, a licensed coach and MVP player, and we went to the same university back in the day. He is a Hall of Fame member of the University of Western Ontario.
Go Mustangs.
Go Mustangs. Nick, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you, Jamie, for the all the lies. It always feels good when people lie about you. No, thank you very much, Jamie. It's a pleasure to be here. I have been excited about this podcast and getting some time to spend with you ever since we connected. So let's get her going.
It's your birthday today, right?
It is.
Happy
55.
Birthday.
Freedom 55, man. And you know what? I don't feel it. And age is just a number. It's true what they say. Age is just a number.
Just on that note, before we dive in, do you reflect on your birthday? Do you have any routines or rituals on birthdays to think about the past, the present, and the future?
I do. Well, first, you got the family that reminds you about how old you are. But it's an interesting phenomenon for those of us that are social media inclined, because you know who forces you to remember what the hell's happening with your birthday? It's Facebook, man, because they keep on sending these like, do you remember 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago? And, you know, if you've been on Facebook as long as I have, we're getting to the point now where Facebook's kind of reminding me of things that were posted 15 plus years ago. So I did get many of those this morning about old parties that we had. Maybe my wife threw me a surprise party. And my wife actually posted on social media today a photo of when we met. And we've been together 28 some odd years. Man, we look like kids. We look like teenagers. So in terms of reflection, you always reflect because that's what birthdays are all about. But yeah, social media, man, they force you to reflect because they remind you.
Let's start there. Let's actually start at the back before we move forward. When you were growing up, who influenced you? What were some of the early experiences that shaped you?
Well, first of all, you cannot be not influenced, double negative, by your parents. I mean, so let's start with that. I was young, son of immigrant parents, Greek background. My name is Nick, after all. My cousins are Nick, Nicole, Nicoletta, just like the big fat Greek wedding. So my parents came over from the old country in the 60s. They came over separately. My dad came on a boat and my mom came on a plane. They met on Bloor Street, downtown Toronto, walking into a learn how to speak English class for immigrants. Moved to Scarborough. That's where I grew up. So respect for Scarborough out there. And growing up as a kid, ideas and the values of hard work were instilled in me, saving your money, education was very, very important. And obviously a passion and a love for football, soccer, as we call it here in this country. So I think that's where it all started. Obviously, I have to give, props to my parents, my dad especially, who I always wanted to please because that's what you do as a faithful son. And then going through my career, obviously, I had a bunch of other people that I looked up to. When I graduated, I worked at CIBC for many years in the banking industry. And the guy that recruited me out of Western was the CEO of CIBC Securities at the time, John Vivash. I was employee number, I don't know, maybe 5 or so at CIBC Securities at the time. And within like 2 years, the mutual fund business just blew up in Canada. And there were like 500 employees. So it was awesome to work in an entrepreneurial venture within a large, massive bank. So those are, and then, you know what, let me mention one more. So it's my dad, John Vivash at CIBC. One more. This is the consultant guy. His name is Dr. Jack Fitzentz, Silicon Valley. I met him doing my research, doing my PhD. He's known as the godfather of human capital benchmarking. So my area of research is intellectual capital and knowledge management. It started because of Dr. Jack. When I met him for the first time at a conference, it's like you're meeting the Messiah, right? Like sometimes you read books about people and you see videos about people, and then when you finally meet your hero, you don't know what to do with yourself. And this guy was bigger and better and more awesome in person than he was, this idea that I had from him. So Dr. Jack Fitzentz is also somebody that I looked up to.
With Dr. Jack, do you remember something that he said or a lesson that he imparted either directly or indirectly that inspired you in the direction you're in now?
Yeah, one thing that he told me actually has to do with research. And this is actually a piece of advice that I use now. I'm chair of the department here in strategy at the business school at McMaster University. So I'm responsible for hiring all our new faculty members. And one of the things that he told me about research was, all research has a home. You just have to find that home for it, right? So, as you know, we live, eat, and breathe publications and publishing. And sometimes it's a nasty industry because, you go after a journal, you get rejected. Go after another one, you get rejected. People tend to quit after they get a couple of rejections. And it was Dr. Jack who told me, never, ever quit. Always find a home for your research. And it turns out, you were talking about my citations. Some of the most cited publications that I've had in my career over 25 years were not from the highest so-called ranked, most prestigious journals. It was just that the research was good enough that it attracted a certain of academic interest, and it was basically because of Dr. Jack and me, still finding that right outlet for my research to be published.
Just a quick story about you that I didn't mention in the intro was I reached out to you recently, non-related to this podcast, and I just asked you a quick question about something that I'm doing some research within leadership. And within a few minutes of you reading it, you sent me like 6 links that were better than ChatGPT. And I turned to my wife and I said, damn, this guy is like the human ChatGPT for business.
You know what? On that note, Jamie, let me talk to you about what is the number one characteristic that I respect in people. You can be awesome, you can be famous, you can be a speaker, you can be published, but the number one thing that I respect in people is responsiveness. Somebody reaches out to you, you need to be responsive. In a world today where we are bombarded by emails and bombarded by texts and WhatsApp and TikTok, and obviously I wrote the book on information bombardment. I know. If you're not responsive, it is so disrespectful. So, thank you, Jamie, for saying that, because that's my rule of thumb, man. I don't care where you are in the world. You need to respond to people. Even to say, I don't have the answer yet, Jamie. Give me a day. Give me 2 days. I'll get the answer to you. And you know what, Jamie? It's not just business people. I'm trying to teach this to my kids because I don't know, man, this new generation of young punks out there, they're all about the WhatsApps and the Snapchats, and they don't like talking to people mano a mano or face to face. So I think if there's one thing that I can deliver to the audience of your podcast today is try to be as responsive as possible, because you know what? People respect that. If somebody emails me and says, we're looking for a keynote speaker at this location on this date, and I respond in 30 seconds, that person will never forget you, Jamie. Never. It is what I call inimitability. It makes me different. You can't copy it if you're too slow and I'm faster than you, right? So responsiveness is important. I respect that.
I love that. And it comes back to this phrase that it's cliche, but I think it's true, is the way you do anything is the way you do everything. So I saw that in you. And I also think it's directly connected with time. Like, for example, this podcast, we set it for 2:30 p.m. You're a very busy guy. You have a million things going on. We talked about coming on a little early to do a check.
Mhm.
You were on at 2:20. So I love that coming from you, reliability, responsiveness. And what I'm bringing to it is also those who do those little things obviously are the ones who value the relationship on some level. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you for that. And you know what? It's a trait that perhaps is missing in modern society, right? That this idea of punctuality and being ahead of schedule. I'm telling you, man, we talk a lot about our kids right now. It's one thing to talk
Yes.
about the business world, but you're trying to teach those values, to your kids, and I see it in them now. So I must be doing something right because my one son has an internship this summer, and he was running late,
Yep.
and he was calling me as he was running late because he was so stressed out that he would be late. I love that. That should be a characteristic that's universal, JB.
I love that and I relate to that. And I want to continue on that path before we move forward. You talked about responsiveness as something that you walk your talk, you emulate for your kids, not just for your clients and your students. If you had another character trait that you've carried through, that's carried you through tough times and made you who you are, what would you say it is?
This one is one that I don't see as being unique to me, but the people that I meet tell me it's the one thing they remember about me. And that is just my passion and dynamism and I don't know what you call it, joie de vivre. A person that you and I know, Jamie, is Martin Perlmutter, obviously very, very important guy in both our lives. Martin, the first time he ever met me, he just said, Nick, you are like an energy drink encapsulated in a human body, right? So I don't see it because I just get excited about stuff. I mean, I was like that as an athlete. I was the guy on the soccer field that was trying to pump everybody up, that was motivated. I was that on the track. I'm like that in the classroom, Jamie. I mean, imagine in today's world when students are paying so much money for tuition and they're coming to a class and the professor's a dud. You know, why? You don't have to be. Show some personality, show that you love the topic, and by doing so, automatically the students are going to love it and be committed to you. So I don't know if that answers your question, but being passionate and loving and being dynamic, what you do, I mean, it helps you in everything, Jamie. Your kids, your school, your profession, your wife. Be passionate about who you're going to spend the rest of your life with. All these things, and I think you're right. You started the conversation talking about the influence of my parents had on me. It was probably my parents that taught me how to be passionate about whatever you're doing, and I'm trying to instill that now in the next generation as well.
I think that's such an important lesson to impart and to reinforce. They know you're the expert, but what differentiates on the next level beyond the citations, beyond all the awards is I live this, I love this, and this is a real passion. So thank you for reinforcing that.
Yeah. Well, when you meet people, guess what? You can't fake it.
Yeah.
That's it. We were talking about caring. When you care, it's authentic. It's
Yeah.
real. People see it in you. If you're up on stage delivering a keynote and people see you, blood, sweat, and tears, and you've given it for 60 minutes, you gave it. You can't fake that. So they know, well, he takes it seriously. Now, they don't necessarily have to take the topic or the content that you delivered seriously, but the old famous line about keynotes, man, it's not just about what you told them, it's about how you made them feel. I get more feedback from people that I've given keynotes to that remember me from eons ago. That's the one thing, Jamie, about me being 55. I've been doing this a long time. And actually, that's probably, you talk about different achievements. That's probably my greatest achievement is the fact that I'm still a keynote speaker at 55 when I started when I was 25. So, to still be able to be on stage 30 years, when you started a career and you were like, oh my God, the youngest keynote speaker in Canada, Nick Bontis. And now I'm the oldest guy, right? So if you're passionate and they make you feel a certain way, you'll never forget that. And I get that from my students too. Students will come back to me now. And here's the scary part, Jamie. I'm now teaching the kids of my former students. Oh, that's when the time has come.
That's truly legacy. Uh, let's talk about where your head is at right now as a professor and what
Sure,
matters to you right now in the subjects that you are talking about and the topics that you're most focused on with your students
sure.
at McMaster.
Sure. So we'll talk about a couple. The first one is strategy, because I am a strategy professor. I'm chair of the strategy department. My PhD is from Ivy Western in strategy. Let's talk about strategy. Strategy is one of those concepts that's been around a while, okay? Like since the 1930s, 40s, you got Harvard's legacy in the world of strategy and what they used to call business policy at the time. And it's got this analogy that is stolen from the ancient Greeks in military speak. Strategy is the Greek for the word strategos, which is a soldier. So what was the strategy in ancient Greek to win a battle, right? You had so many soldiers, they had so many soldiers, you had a mountain, you had a sky, you had sun, you had wind, you take care of all the environmental conditions, you look at your own competencies, and you elicit a strategy. Why I'm studying this topic now is because it has come full circle. Organizations, when I did my PhD in strategy, we're still doing strat plans. You start with the mission and the vision and the objectives and all the business objectives and the operational activities. And the CEO's job is to deliver on that strategy, right? And now in the year 2024, the opposite is true. It's not about coming up with a strategy that's supposed to last you 5 years, 6 years, 7 years. It's about, oh my God, can we be resilient and pivot in 6 months if something comes to beat us up? Do we have the aptitude and the attitude to determine our altitude? I know I sound like a Baptist preacher here, but that's what you need to do. So strategy has come a long way. Strategy used to be about planning, and now today strategy is about improvisation. Can I make it up as I go? Can I turn left when I used to always turn right? People use the excuses in large organizations, especially. This is how we've always done it around here. Like, everybody's heard that excuse, and that is your death knell, right? Because if you can't pivot, all the technology is coming at us at 100 miles an hour, and we don't have to sit here and talk about all the stories, right, of Uber and the stories of Airbnb, all the famous companies that completely upended industries. Well, in the year 2024, you're talking about ChatGPT. Oh my God, ChatGPT version 4.0 just came out last week. Lord have mercy, my brain is blowing up, because I'm like, what industry isn't going to be impacted? So I think strategy now is about resiliency. It's about inimitability. What can you do that nobody else can do? And can you do it fast? That's really what strategy is about. So that's the number one thing I'm talking about in my strategy classes. And my second thing that I'm talking about in my strategy classes is you as an individual, as a knowledge worker, how do you maintain productivity, efficiency? How do you collaborate? So let's talk about collaboration very, very quickly. What I'm finding in the year 2024 is that knowledge is power. What I know versus what you know is going to make the difference, Jamie, in how we compete. And now ChatGPT is trying to be the equalizer to make everybody know the same sorts of things. But here's the truth. We have this new concept now that didn't exist even a few months ago called engineer prompting, right? How do you program to tell ChatGPT something better than what the competition told them to tell you what to do, right? So I find that this is very, very attractive to students. They want to learn how to compete. They want to understand how to use information and knowledge to their benefit. And collaboration is very, very important, because in today's world, we're talking to each other with Zoom a lot. COVID didn't do us much good when we were stuck in our homes all that period of time. So, many of us don't have the luxury of speaking to each other face to face, mano a mano, where I look into your eyes. And Jamie, when I look into your eyes and you smile at me and I see the little corners of your eyes, I see things, right? I see that you trust me and that we have rapport and we can communicate. That's what knowledge management is all about. So those are the two main things. What does strategy mean in the year 2024 and beyond, and how can we as knowledge workers collaborate and be productive?
What are your thoughts on how AI, you touched on it, but can you tell me a little more about how AI can factor into those two areas?
Yeah,
strategy
for sure.
and collaboration in 2024 moving forward.
All right. So there's a reason why you brought me on here. You know what I'm saying, Jamie? And it wasn't not to just kind of tell you what you were expecting to hear, because I'm going to get controversial now. I'm going to get controversial. Here's a university professor, tenured, who's going to tell you this. ChatGPT, you can't fight it. It's a tech war and it's winning. So, I look at some of my colleagues here. I'm calling you from the university, and we've got committees here on campus talking about how are we going to deal with this with students. Should we take it away from them? Should we not have them have access to it? Is it part of the rules of academic freedom and plagiarism? It's the wrong question to ask, Jamie. I look at this like a calculator. All right, in 1975, we were doing math without a calculator. A calculator came out, it became cheap, and now you got to teach math in a different way because you got to assume that every kid by the 80s has a calculator. That's what ChatGPT is going to be. Artificial intelligence is going to be the tool that I possess as a student, as a business person, as an analyst, as an investor, and who can use that tool to the best of our abilities. In fact, in my book, I wrote about singularity. Singularity is this concept in AI where, the consciousness of the computers is as equal or more than what the consciousness of human beings is going to be like. We're close, Jamie. I mean, singularity used to be science fiction, right? I see it like being a couple of years away. I mean, ChatGPT's only been around for like a year and a half. I remember it was like, a couple of Christmases ago when it got launched. And now this latest version is unreal. By the time version 5 or 6 comes out, we're each going to have our own AI. I'm going to have my AI in the morning. She's going to wake me up, tell me what I'm going to eat, how I'm going to feel that day. It's going to be, part and parcel of how we live. So when it comes to students, I have to learn now how to assign cases to them, Western case method, knowing that they're going to go to ChatGPT to get the first draft, right? And it doesn't matter what profession you're in.
What would be one or two skills within AI that you recommend your students to get really good at, and not just for them, but for business owners?
Okay, I'm going to give you one for students and one for business people, okay?
Yeah.
The first one for students, no brainer. And I told my kids this, and now they're doing it themselves. Getting a job, no brainer. You take the job posting, you put it in a PDF, you upload it to ChatGPT. You take your resume, you put it in a PDF, you upload it to ChatGPT. And then you say, the first document is A, the second document is B. Can you please make me a cover letter, C, that maximizes the probability that what I have in B is going to get my job A? Click. And in 30 seconds, it comes up with magic. I don't know how it does it, Jamie. Honestly, I call myself an academic researcher, but when I see what ChatGPT does, it blows my mind, man. Like we're recording this in late May, so we just had our final exams about 3 or 4 weeks ago. Okay, so after the students were done with their final exams, I did a little bit of an experiment with ChatGPT. I took the case exam. I uploaded it to ChatGPT. I took the framework that I teach in my strategy class. I uploaded it into ChatGPT. And then I asked it the exact same question I asked the students, in 8 pages, Times New Roman, single spaced, using these 23 steps, do a case solution of A using framework B. 30 seconds later, Jamie, I got an A+ paper. No holds barred. So that's it from students. It's unreal. On the business side, same thing, but now we're talking about RFPs, right? We're talking about responding to a competitive bidding process for business. Like we all have to compete for business. We all have to make cases. None of us have unlimited budgets. We're all competing. So it's the same model that I just described to you on the student side as it is on the business side. And now I see more and more businesses who are getting really, really good at it. My wife, for example, is a real estate agent. She has to compete for business. So, a couple that's going to sell their home, that's looking for an agent to list their house, maybe invited, 2 brokers, 3 maybe to their house, sit at the kitchen table, show me a presentation of how you would sell my house. How would you price it? And now what my wife is doing is using ChatGPT to absolutely deliver on a whole marketing plan. This is what the drone footage would look like. This is what the 360 footage would look like. This is the benchmarking of all the properties that have been sold. She's actually providing all of this information just during the listing stage. Forget about winning it, because if you got a tool that can deliver the information for you, you might as well sell them really, really hard at the beginning, Jamie.
I love how practical that is and how applicable it is. How do you ensure you get good feedback to develop yourself within a business situation?
You have to ask. Very simple. Getting feedback, whether it's positive or negative, is simply a matter of asking the question, how did I do? Here's the other thing that I like. Most people will be polite to your face because nobody wants to give away bad news. So you know what? Get past that. Ask them, look, Jamie, you've been on stage, I've been on stage. No one knows better than if you killed a keynote than the bloody speaker. You know, man, I've been doing this for 30 years. If I've killed it on stage, I know I killed it. People were laughing, standing, ovations, the whole bit. So when I go back to the client after I'm done and I thank her for her hospitality, I get feedback, but I don't ask her, how did I do? What's she going to say? She's going to say, Nick, you did great. I hired you. You made me look good. Ask her, what's the one thing I could have done a little bit better? See that how I asked the question a little bit different? So the answer to your question, honestly, is ask the question so that you get something added value back in return. I think that's very important. I try to do that as chair of the department when I give feedback to my own junior professors. They know what they've done well at. They know what their teaching ratings are like. They know what their publications are like. And if I can give them something that gives them that little incremental benefit, that's really added value.
I like that. And that's actually in line with what Bono said when he was doing a world tour. He would ask his team, he says, yeah, I know it was good. I know it was good. What's one thing I can improve? What's one thing I could be better? I think
Same
the
thing.
best in the world do that. And it's funny because I've always been sensitive before I was a speaker over the last 7 years doing it full time. I've become a little thicker skinned and tougher. And I
Yeah.
actually welcome that one or two things if I ask, and having the courage to listen, lean
Yeah.
in, and not take it personally. So thank you for that.
Well, let me tell you, as a professor, we have the luxury of getting student ratings
Yes.
after every course that are anonymous. So I've been reading a lot of stuff that's bad about me for 30 years, Jamie.
Well, I'm
It's
sure
always a
there's
better
not
way
too
to go.
much. I would have loved to have you as a professor. It's like Dead Poet Society for business management. Uh, what's one or two management myths?
Sure, management myths. So let's talk about leadership for a second, okay? I mean, look, people have written and spoken so much about leadership. You know, leadership is about transforming people, about, taking lower performers and putting them into upper performer echelons. We talk about inspiration, motivation. You know what I think leadership is about? Leadership is about not being noticed. So I've kind of answered your question from a mythological perspective because when you ask the question, what's leadership about? Your mind goes to, well, who's a good leader? How can I be like him? Or how can I be like her? What are the characteristics that I can take away from him or her and build? It's the same thing that I did as a professor, Jamie. When I started here at McMaster, over 2 decades ago, I walked around campus and asked, who are the best profs here? And I studied them. It didn't matter if you were in math or astronomy or archaeology, things that I knew nothing about. I was watching you, as a professor to try to glean the things that you were good at, but I was also watching at the mistakes that they were making as well. So leadership to me, great leadership in organizations is really about when the whole organization is just, smooth, man. Everything is trucking along and no one is noticing anything negative because part of what I've learned also is if you stick your neck out a little bit too much, guess what, man? You're going to get sliced at some point because nobody bats 1,000 forever, Jamie. Nobody.
Who's an example of an effective leader that we've heard of or we haven't heard of, and what were some of the characteristics that they displayed based on not being noticed and running a team smoothly?
Yeah, sure. So I'm involved with an organization right now called CONCACAF. So it is the federation of soccer that basically administers and manages this continental region, which is North America, Central America, and the Caribbean. Everybody knows what FIFA is. FIFA is the umbrella organization for the whole world. CONCACAF is for this region. The president of this region is a gentleman that I really, really admire by the name of Victor Montagliani. And the reason why I admire him is because he's just like I described to you. He is a leader where he instills the most important value that everybody needs to also instill in. And it turns out that the value that everybody in the whole region, all 41 countries that are members of CONCACAF, will tell you when they've heard Victor speak or they've met him, family. It is about family. Because when you hear the word family in a business environment, it instills a certain quality, right, of respect and empathy
Yes.
and, wanting to be there for people, right? So here's an example of an individual that doesn't have to be there all the time. He doesn't have to stick his neck out. Like the traditional leaders that we think about. He's definitely charismatic, so that's a trait, But here's something else, Jamie, that he is that I find amazing. And this is a little controversial. He's multilingual. Let's talk about multilingualism for a second, Jamie. Right now, you and I are talking in English, right? There's a certain level, if I may, of Anglophonic arrogance when English people talk to one another. Because guess what? By definition, if somebody is French, Spanish speaking, or Francophone, or anything else, it might be a little bit too difficult for them to understand. Jamie, you know how fast I talk on stage. So if I've got individuals in the audience that don't have English as a first language, it's a little bit problematic, right? Victor speaks multiple languages, good enough that he can have full-blown conversations with people, who speak Spanish, who speak French, who speak Italian. That to me is such an amazing characteristic for a leader, because if you try just a little bit, Jamie, it doesn't have to be a lot, just a little bit. If you know there's some Hindi people in your audience or some Arabic people in your audience, and you try a couple sentences in Hindi or Arabic, you've developed amazing love and rapport as a leader right from the get-go.
What it reminds me of is I did a series of workshops during COVID virtually for one of the largest pharmaceutical companies, and they spoke multiple languages from Europe, from the Middle East.
Right.
And one of the things that they started with was, I'm a little bit uncertain about my English because it's my second, my third, my fourth language. I said, that makes you instantly not just relatable and authentic, you're multidimensional compared to some of your audiences who only speak English or only
100%.
speak one language. So embrace that. Can you talk about how your journey in soccer took place?
So absolutely, and I'll say this, Jamie, I'm just lucky. I was lucky to find something at a very young age that I just loved and worshipped. I mean, it was just one of those things. I think my dad took me to a professional football match when I was very, very young, and I think when you walk into the stadium and you see the people singing and screaming, and then you see it's such a simple game. It's a ball. And that's it. And it goes in a net. You know what I mean? So from a complexity perspective, it's not complex, which is why they call it the beautiful game, which is why it's the most popular game on the planet. So in Scarborough, in the 70s when I was young, and it was a cauldron of immigrants, just like most of the GTA is. They were playing soccer because they were bringing it from Scotland, from England, from Jamaica, from Guyana, and I played for a soccer team called Maple Leaf in Scarborough, and it was the United Nations, Jamie, and we had people from all over the world. I have to give props to my coach, a gentleman by the name of Monty Henson from Guyana, who I still have memories of. We're talking like 40 years later now, of him calling my name. Nick, run, Nick, now, Nick, shoot, Nick, run. So sometimes you have these memories of how people used to call your name, right? So that's how soccer started for me at a very young age. Obviously, I played, growing up in Scarborough. I played on some very, very successful teams. I was lucky enough to get recruited to go play soccer at Western, but I also ran track. So I actually ran track and played soccer at Western, had a great career in university. As you mentioned in the intro, I won many national awards and was inducted into the Western Hall of Fame recently, and then went on. So now you've got to transfer that passion. So, I'm playing soccer at Western, and there's a young lady that I'm interested in. Her name happened to be Stacy. And of course, what am I going to do? I'm going to invite her to a soccer game. Hey, would you like to, watch me at my soccer game? And I'm like, she's never been to a soccer game. She doesn't know sports that well. We're completely divergent when it comes to the whole soccer love affair thing. And then she tells me she's going to hate me for me telling you this, Jamie. After the game, I go to the parking lot, and like the guys, you're trying to impress the girl, right?
Yeah.
How did I do, right? Because I ended up with Stacy. Now she shares the passion of football that I also have. And, I've gone on to coach, got my licenses, coached to my kids, transferred that passion to my kids. Now both my sons are soccer players. They both play at Western, so it's a treat to go back to campus and watch them play. Charlie will become a FIFA agent one day, my older kid. And Dino, the second one, signed a pro contract at Forge FC, our professional league here in Canada. So it just continues. And now my role in CONCACAF is to share the passion with all 41 member countries within our region. And our region region is going to have, the most prominent soccer events in history in the next 3 years. So in 2024, this summer, we're going to be hosting Copa America, one of the biggest soccer events on the planet. Next summer, we're going to be hosting the FIFA Club World Cup. And then in 2026 summer, we're hosting the FIFA World Cup. So, I mean, it's 3 summers in a row. I couldn't have written a better script, Jamie, in terms of how my life was going to go in the world of soccer. But let me tell you, it wasn't part of the plan. I don't plan things out. People think I plan things out. He's a strategy guy. He plans things. I don't, man. Sometimes it's just like improvisation. I told you, you open a door, you go this way. You open a door, you go that way. But I love football. It's very, very simple. I also love how in Canada, our women's team is just as good, just as prominent, just as famous as our men's team. Good luck to them with the Olympics this summer. We have over 1 million people registered to play football in this country. And another stat that I heard recently that I hadn't heard before, almost every single little girl in Canada tries soccer at least once. It's an amazing statistic. I don't think you can say that for any other country around the world. So amazing.
That's an extraordinary statistic.
Yeah. Sports is an amazing thing, Jamie. I loved it. I have a sister a year younger than me that grew up in Scarborough as well, but she grew up at a time when there wasn't girls soccer. So here she was playing on boys teams, right? And now we see the prevalence of women's football, and we have a women's professional soccer league on the horizon here in Canada as well. So if you have listeners out there who are listening to me right now and they've got young kids and they're trying to figure out if they're going to put them in sports, you got to put your kids in sports, at least to try when they're young, because they learn so much. They learn about commitment. They learn about teamwork. The other thing they learn about, Jamie, when it comes to sports, they learn how to lose properly, because there's a right way to win and there's a right way to lose. And I find when I meet students in the classroom who might get bad news, the ones that have athleticism in their background, who play team sports, they have a better way of managing that equilibrium, right, between winning and losing.
Yeah, how you manage failure is such a valuable resource in terms of grit and persistence that you can tell those who can rebound quicker from rejection, from failure, even serious ones, because of their sports background.
Yeah. And you mentioned a word there that I love, grit. It's something in Canada that we're known for, right? We're known for our grit and being hardworking, and this idea of resiliency. But look, we've all gone through challenges. None of our lives have been rosy 1,000%, including my own. I've had significant setbacks in my life as well. But it starts and ends with family, right? This is why I got a picture of mine right behind me. When things are tough, that's who you lean on, right? To give you the strength to kind of carry on. And the cool thing about the digital world, Jamie, that I've learned is people only care for about 24 hours, man. Once there's bad news, boom, it's gone, and they're on to the next thing, right? So that's a skill we all should embrace.
Nick, if you had a piece of advice to give people based on everything you've learned in business and life,
wow,
what would that be?
Nice, easy question, Jamie. Give this one about 5 seconds of thought here. So I know what I'm going to say. I mentioned this word earlier in the presentation, but I'm going to flesh it out a little bit more, okay? Inimitability. I love that word. Inimitability. How can you be, do, say, believe something, act, and perform in a way that nobody else on the planet can copy? That's what will make you unique. In the strategy literature, in academic literature, for many, many years, we used to have this concept of your unique competitive advantage, right? When you talk about it from a firm level of analysis. But now take it to you as an individual. What can you do to make yourself stand out? Because I'm sorry, Jamie, the year 2024 is tough. We were talking about artificial intelligence. We were talking about technology. Lord have mercy. How are our children going to compete in a world like this? How are our children going to save enough money to invest in their first home, Jamie? Get a real job, a profession. There's significant challenges for this next generation. But if they can zone in on something that they're passionate about, if they can zone in on something that makes them inimitable, know something about a topic, or execute a skill better than anybody else, you will never, ever be canceled, ever. You will always have value if you can do something better than anybody else. That's the best piece of advice I can give students right up to CEOs, because even CEOs, the top echelon of the business world, have to come up with some sort of inimitable advantage for themselves.
That's one of the topics we spoke of in our pre-call with speaking. How do we renew ourselves as speakers?
Right.
How do I create more blue oceans for myself?
You're right.
So,
Right.
do you have any processes to look for new blue oceans, new
Yeah.
differentiation as a
Sure.
speaker?
Sure. So it's a little scary, this strategy I'm going to tell you, because it assumes that you don't have your 60 minutes fully scripted going in, because I don't. I know what my inventory of, topics I'm going to talk about. I know what my slides are going to be, but in terms of what I'm going to say from minute 1 to minute 60, I don't. And when I confirm what I'm going to say is typically the night before or the morning of, when I've spoken to the audience. That's how I do it. So I know some speakers don't like to mingle, and some mingle a little too much. I just kind of zone in on maybe 1 or 2 or 3 people that are in the audience, and I sit down and I have breakfast with them before I'm about to go, and I literally ask them the exact same question that you just asked me. What keeps you up late at night? What are you most afraid of? How is success defined for you in the next 1 year, 3 years, 5 years? And it is amazing that if you as a speaker just listen a little bit, this is the oxymoron about being a great keynote speaker. You got to listen. You got to shut up, stop talking for a bit, and just listen to what they say. And if you can triangulate what they said as part of your content for a solution, it's magical, man. There is no better high, Jamie. You know it. You've done it. There's no better high than when you've gotten off stage, somebody told you something during breakfast that bothers them, and you actually spoke about it. And if you found them somewhere in the auditorium, you actually looked at them while you were giving them the solution. It's an amazing feeling.
Yes, what you just described so well is customization or personalization that feels spontaneous or improvised, but it's really based on your 30 years of
Yes.
knowledge, and you're integrating it so that it feels like the most natural thing in the world, that it was for that one person. And if it's for that one person, it's for every one of the 250 people in the audience.
Yeah. You nailed. Great job, podcast moderator, because you just summarized it perfectly. They want to feel like you spoke to them. It
Yes.
might be that you're only speaking to the one guy that you met at breakfast, but that's not how they want you to feel. They want you to feel that you've spoken to all of them. And we said this earlier in the interview, right? They might not remember what you said. They might remember a couple of slides, but man, if they walk out there saying, Bontis, damn, man, he made me feel good. He was funny. I got some actionable advice out of it. People will never forget that. So I try to do that all the time. And you're right, Jamie. It's not something that comes to people easily. It's definitely not something that I used to do in the first part of my career, first 5 years, because you're just trying to figure out what you're going to say and how you're going to say it and where do I stand and how do I stop saying and do my slides look ugly, and you're not. And here's the other thing: you're never going to please everybody. That's the other thing, Jamie. There's always going to be somebody out there who's going to say you're a quack, you don't know what you're saying. In fact, my oldest kid, Charlie, came to see one of my keynote presentations a couple of weeks ago. He hasn't been to one of my presentations in a long time. He comes to me, everybody, gives me, standing ovation and clapping, and Nick, you were awesome. My kid comes up to me after, he goes, Dad, you were all right, but your slides suck, man. They're so old. Let me fix your slides. So even my kid, I can't satisfy. But after I sat down with him and I did look at my slides, I'm like, damn, yeah, he's right. They need a refreshing, but it's okay, Jamie, because I got Chat GPT that can make my slides better.
Oh, it's so funny. Yeah, our kids are sometimes the most humbling audience. As soon as I start talking on certain issues, my 11-year-old daughter might say, "Okay, is this going to be another TED Talk?" I'm like, "No, no, but I want to teach you something. Is it a
Yeah.
speech? I just want to know." So
Yeah.
yes, what's your definition of success?
My definition of success. I got the answer to this one: maximizing leisure. That is my definition of success. And I've been saying it now among my friends and my really people that are closest to me, people that I go on vacation with, people that I have dinners with. I've been saying it a lot lately. And the reason why I've been seeing it a lot lately is because, okay, look, Jamie, money is important. No one's going to lie. People need money to pay the bills, and having a little bit of extra money allows you to buy nice, pretty things. But at the end of the day, you got to maximize leisure, man. That's what life is about, right? So you often hear about this when you travel to Europe, right? Like when you go to places like Italy and Greece and Spain, when it's joie de vivre and people are having a nap at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and everything is shut down and they're going to the beach and they have 6 weeks of vacation and they're like, you Americans, you Canadians, you don't know what the hell you're doing. I've been listening to them for the last 20, 30 years. And now that's where I'm translating my life. And I'm saying, hey, wife, let's work hard. Kids, let's work hard. Why? Because after we're done working hard, boom, let's find a place where we can share time with each other. Life is short. Have a good dinner. Have a good meal. That's the other thing, Jamie, man. When's the last time you actually sit down and have a good, restful meal with your friends and family, right? As Greeks, this is something that's very, very important to us, right? Like there used to be a time when you'd sit down with your parents and your family and you'd have a meal for a dinner for an hour, maybe 2 hours if you're lucky. And now we're like, boom, let's get the Starbucks. Boom, let's get the Tim Hortons, get our coffee, get our breakfast within 2 seconds and get out of here. So that, to answer your question, is the definition of success. Maximize leisure.
And you walk your talk. Well, we started the conversation on Facebook and how it reminded you of your birthday. When I see you on Facebook, you strike me as someone who has work-life balance, even though people say it's not perfect and that's impossible. I see you with your family. I see you playing soccer with your kids and watching them. I see you with your wife on vacation. And I see you as a speaker and as all the different things you do professionally. Your actions speak so loud when it comes to how you've managed your life. So thank you for
Well,
that
thank you for
example.
that. No, thank you for that. Let me also preface and warn the world that all of us portray a certain life on social media that may not necessarily exist in reality. I'm not going to post a video of my wife and I arguing or me, yelling at my kids. We're trying to put some sort of digital footprint that's attractive. But putting that aside, yes is the answer to the question. I'm not happy with the legislated Canadian labor policy of 2 weeks vacation for every individual in this country. It's not good enough. We have to find opportunities to go on weekends or holidays. And then when you go on a weekend or a holiday, Jamie, make it count, man. Like, don't just sit there on your phone when you were on your phone the whole time during work, and then you're going to do that when you're on vacation as well. That's not going to work for you. Shut it all down. Focus on the people that love you and that, the people that care for you. You were talking about caring as a leader, the people that can transform you. And when you become 55 years old, as I am today, it's amazing. The famous motto of Freedom 55 from the insurance industry, right? And I'm thinking, yeah, I'm not ready to retire. Are you kidding me? I'm just getting started, Jamie. Honestly, I'm just getting started. But the one thing that I will never ever shrink is the importance of leisure and vacation. And you know what a secret is? Make some of your work leisure as well. I mean, obviously, when you love what you do, you're enjoying it anyway, right? But if I'm going on a business trip, why don't I bring my wife with me? If I'm going on a CONCACAF trip, why don't I bring my kids with me so that I can share? This idea of work-life balance, it presumes that there's a wall in between, and if one goes up, the other one goes down, and the other one goes, no, man, maximize both, Jamie, maximize both.
I love that, maximize both. And as we wrap up, as a professor
Yep.
and a writer, author, if you were interviewing Dr. Nick Bontis, what would you ask that we haven't covered yet?
Wow, Mr. Podcaster, that is a wicked question. What would you ask? What are you afraid of the most? So I panic, when you're about to go to bed at night and your mind goes like 100 miles an hour and, you start thinking crazy stuff. I panic about peace and calmness in my life. What can usurp it? You know what I mean? And I think of health. I don't want to get too philosophical here. We're business people after all, but health, man, if you don't have it, you're not going to be able to do all the things we just talked about. right? If you don't have a connection with your parents, and my parents are still alive, God bless. They're still in Scarborough in the same house that I grew up in, but they're in their 80s right now, and they're not getting as quick as they used to be, right? And my dad said he wants to go to Greece this summer for vacation. I'm like, all the power to you, go, because I know there's not a lot of summers left for him to be able to go on vacation, right? And it's the same thing with my wife's parents, right? My in-laws. You have to take advantage of all the hours that are left. How there's these experts out there, Jamie, that talk to you about, how many hours of vacation, how many days of vacation you have left, how many hours of meals you have left with your kids. It's true what they say. It's not a lot, right? So the one question you can ask me is, what are you afraid of, Nick? I'm afraid of health. I'm afraid of time, right? We don't have a lot of it in either way, right? There's sicknesses that we're getting now as a society, Jamie. These sicknesses no one used to get as a society 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago. Why is that? Are we hurting ourselves because of environmental conditions and pollution and processed food and all these sorts of things? Right? I take a multivitamin every day. I don't know if it makes my urine expensive or if it actually is good for me, but I'll do it because I think it's going to help me maximize leisure and stay on this earth a little bit longer. So I'm afraid of time, and I'm afraid of not being able to spend as much of it with my family as I can.
Thank you for sharing that and for that vulnerability. And I think it's a really good place to end the conversation. If we wanted to spend some time with you and learn more about what you're up to, how to book you as a speaker,
Sure.
and connect, where would we look?
Yeah, the simplest place obviously is on the web. That's where it all starts. I have my information, my contact information. It's simply my name, nickbontis.com. That's my website, nickbontis.com. And on that website, you'll find topics that I speak about. You'll find testimonials. And the most important thing that I think anybody who's purchasing or is interested in hiring keynote speakers, you got to look at some evidence of what they're going to actually deliver for you. They're doing a service for you, right? And that is in the form of a video. So watch the video. And if you think that personality and that content and that dynamism is something that you think you would like to share with your organization or your association, then contact me through my website, and I would love to collaborate with you.
And you do deliver. You are one of the best out there in what we do in keynote speeches for businesses, corporations around the world. I want to thank you for speaking both from the head and the heart, and for, like you always are, being so inspiring, so impactful, and giving us so much to take action on.
Well, thank
Nick,
you. Yeah, thank you, Jamie, for doing this for me. It was a pleasure, and it was a gift for me to spend some time with you, because it also forces me to be a little bit introspective about what's important to my life. So thank you for that.
thank you. And this is the Signature Leadership Show. If you liked this particular episode, be sure to subscribe so that you will not miss the next one, and leave a review. Thank you.